Hello, my name is Joy. Thank you for joining me for the gift of harp. From ancient roots, the instrument itself has evolved and in turn is transforming the lives of those who play, who listen to its music and feel its good vibrations. The harp can exude peace and tranquility, inspire us with its versatility and brilliance, or simply give us comfort and healing. In each episode, we uncover why harp was our guest's instrument of choice, how it has enriched their life, and the waves they are creating in their local or global community. Today's guest for many is the first port of call for excellent advice, emergency string replacement, or anything harp related. Suneetha Carter, who resides in South Australia's Adelaide Hills, has many unique gifts as a result of her travel, training, and experience in more than one profession. A freelance harpist both in Australia and overseas, in solo, ensemble, and orchestral arenas, a much respected harp teacher for all levels of learning, she is creating an incredible harp hub after becoming owner-manager of her father's established business. Welcome, Suneetha.
Thank you for having me.
We're on at opposite ends of the country, but I'm in awe after hearing about what projects you are working on to create connection and accessibility with the harp community in Australia and beyond. Let's start with your childhood. Could you speak
Yeah.
about particularly your father's influence?
My father, many of you would know, is Stephen Carter. He was principal flautist in the Adelaide Symphony for, I don't know, 40 years or more. As a result of that, I grew up in a musical family, absorbed it. I don't know any different. We were all, I guess, allowed to pick an instrument of our choice, and with having his influence, that sort of it was just a normal thing. So all my siblings play something. I was the only one that went professional with it, I guess. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And
Um,
your first instrument of choice was not the harp, though.
no, I was going to be a double bass player, which I find slightly amusing because I don't see myself now as a double bass player. But what actually happened was I grew up in Aldgate, for people that know the Adelaide Hills, and I think my father took me to a concert in Scott Creek, which is about 20 minutes away, and we saw a harp there, and I said to my dad, I want to learn the harp. So at a young age I just assumed if you want to play the harp you just went to the harp shop and buy a harp. So the harp I bought, or my father or my parents bought, was a Peter Kempster, and he had already been making, well, he made for about 20 years, and my father took over his business when he passed away. So that's sort of how that transition happened. And Carter Harps, or Kempster Instrument overall, has been a 40-year company. So it's been going for quite a long time. Yeah.
That's how I came to have my first harp, was through your dad's business. It came all the way from Japan to Adelaide and then trucked to Brisbane. So it's a long way
Yes.
around, but that's how that happened.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about what happened then. Where have you gone with the harp since then? Where has it taken you?
Well, I did a Bachelor of Music, which started at Adelaide University, and then I transferred to the University of Toronto. So I originally learnt from Rosemary St. John, who used to be former principal harpist of Adelaide Symphony. And then when I went to Canada, I was with Judy Lohman. I was fortunate to have the teachers I did. I never actually sought them out. I just ended up with them. At some level, I do take it for granted. I just assume this is sort of readily accessible to everybody. It was only after I started teaching in Tassie that I realised what I have is not everybody has access to it. So in that way, it was quite a privilege now when I look back. That not only did I have my father's influence, I had two professional harpists, that I was exposed to. I just seriously don't know any different. It does shape the way you play, and the opportunities you get because of it. Yeah.
You talk about how your experiences have shaped how you relate to your students because you're a well-revered teacher, and how how do you do that? How do you base it on some of your early experiences in life? Can you tell us
So
about?
I actually had my first student at the age of 12, and he was the builder for my parents' home, and he wanted to learn the harp. So I've actually been teaching from the age of 12. And I remember when I moved to Canada, he made me a stool, which I still have. But in terms of how I teach, whenever I get a new student or they ring up or they speak to me and ask me, what's your teaching style? I generally tell them, well, I have to meet you. I need to know why you're playing the harp, what brought you to the harp, and it normally takes me about 3 months if they come weekly to get an understanding of what that person needs and what they actually want from me. As a result of that, I always tell my students they're actually training me to be a teacher. Um, to get teacher training, say through a university on harp, you'll get the basics, but not the real specifics. So all my students train me up. It is a two-way street. It's I learn from them, they learn from me, and it's not just about the harp either. Yeah, so I really enjoy that part because I get a lot from the student that they don't really know they're giving to me,
Yes.
which you can't buy that kind of interaction, which means what I get from that student, I can then pass on to another student, plus my own background of what I know about harp. Yeah.
And as you say, it's not always about harp. Many other things come into it. Could you tell us about how your overcoming the fear of water has contributed to your teaching, amongst other
Okay.
things?
So while I was living in Arizona, we had actually bought a house with a swimming pool. And it was very hard to buy a house without a swimming pool. They were all the real dodgy dud houses. No one bought a house without a swimming pool. Most of their swimming pools are diving pools. And I had just had my son. And I thought it's probably a good idea if I learned how to swim. So the pool nearby had this course swimming for the terrified. And I thought, you know what, how hard could this be? So at 28, I went and took lessons. I was the only one in the class out of four that survived the actual course, and I went on for another 5 years. I trained 3 times a week for 5 years, and then I actually, when I came back to Australia, I coached in Adelaide. Learning as an adult is quite intimidating. It's frightening. You're very exposed. You overthink. For me, there was a life-threatening aspect to it, and I used to get quite anxious just going for lessons. Once I'd got over it and I actually started coaching, that's sort of when my harp teaching started. And I did get a lot of adult learners, and I do have currently a lot of adult learners. And they used to wonder, or kind of, they knew I knew about the adult learning experience. So I used to always tell them at 28, I learnt to swim. And I remember my swim coach would say to me, just get in the water and swim and breathe. But for me, I had to know exactly when to breathe, because if I, tried to take a breath at the wrong time, I inhaled water. Um, and then having anxiety because of the fear, there's a lot of cross reference to, when you do public performance, which I often see when my students perform. There's some are more anxious, some are less. And I find, I guess, the way I learned classical Western, so fairly traditional concert harp music, when I learned, we weren't really taught performance. How do you deal with performance anxiety, public speaking, or, all that kind of stuff, where I think in the sports industry, it's, they have sports psychologists and that kind of thing. So I could cross reference from my own, it was just my own personal. I haven't done anything, studied it or anything, but it was just my own personal reference about
Mm.
how I got through what I needed to, and then I could translate it to what students can do before a concert, and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, very helpful. You relay the story about your dog and lessons, please, because
Well,
one,
I have two basset hounds. So one of them's, oh, she's about 11, but the boy dog, um, he's not musical at all. Not at all. He really doesn't like it. He loves a ball. He's a ball dog. I called him Montgomery, but looking at him now, I should have called him Ronaldo, but he's Monty. And when I practice, if he can find a tennis ball, he'll get the tennis ball, and he knows how to bounce it off the soundboard. And he knows I'll get up if I do that. And there was a time when I was doing Debussy dances as a duet with one of my friends, and there's a lot of pedal changes in that one. And he thought he'd help out, so he'd randomly grab with his teeth the pedals and just move them. And then the other thing he does is, if it's really like, this is too much, he'll put a ball under the harp. So when I put the harp back down, it's off balance. And I don't know, he thinks it's very attention seeking basset hound behaviour. He's quite a cute chap, so he gets away with it. Yeah, it's normally when I take my harp out for a gig, I actually have to clean it up. So I've got a gig this Saturday, and I was having a look at rehearsal. There's all this like slobber on the bass because he'll often rest his head on there. So yeah, it's interesting. He's a funny dog. It's good. Some animals I don't think like the music, and I think others do. Yeah,
of course.
yeah,
Like you,
yeah.
I was classically Western trained, as you put it.
Yep.
And although grateful for those opportunities, as we've been discussing previously, it's quite isolating sometimes. And there are certain rules within that arena. Can you tell us what you've discovered recently, please, in the folk?
Yes.
Um,
So
in-
I grew up because my dad was an orchestral player. That was pretty much all I knew. Folk scene, improvisation, I guess rock world, jazz world, all that kind of stuff. I would say my son, who's now 19, he's a drummer, bass guitar, electric guitar. I would say he exposed me initially to all of that. He has fairly bad eyesight, so learning things orally for him is the easiest. And I used to just watch him just play. I was slightly irritating. As a mother, it's like, seriously, why is it so easy for you? I have taken some jazz lessons. So I did some lessons with Joanna Jordan for a while. And then recently I went to Harpfest New Zealand, and they had a huge range of harpists from all sorts of genres. I think the folk group that really stood out was Adriano and his family, and they have grown up in an oral tradition, and it really stood out how free that tradition is. The other thing I've recently done is they have harp camp. So because of New Zealand, I met people. Andy Rigby asked me to come to their harp camp at Cave Hill Creek in Melbourne, and that was in July. So I went to that, and anybody can be there. So not all of them were harpists, which I thought was interesting because most harp things I've gone to, they're all harpists. So there was recorder players, there was other like drums and some other instruments I wasn't really familiar with. And when they do their sessions, anybody can join in. So you can play as much or as little. But I found it quite inclusive, and it felt to me to actually do that style of music, you have to have other people. You can't do a session like at home. It doesn't. It's not how it works. But say if you're, preparing orchestrally something, you sit at home by yourself and you practice it for hours on end. Where this, you had to be with other people. And I have done those, 6 or 7 hours a day of isolating practice. It's amazing because your hands will do exactly what you want them to do. The skill set you get because of it. I always tell my students it's like being an elite athlete. It's just that we're not recognized that way. We're just kind of like we're musicians. But that's basically what we're doing. We're being elite athletes every day. And then we have 30 seconds, depending what piece we're playing. It could be 10 minutes, it could be a bit more, to play that song or piece of music without any errors. So yeah,
it was a lot more
it's
freedom.
Yeah, I feel it is. It's quite intimidating for me to be in that space because it's not what I grew up with at all. Yeah, it was very rigid. And that was heavily influenced by my harp teachers, both orchestral players, and my father. It's very hard to know any different when you don't have that exposure in the house. But my son really, he's a rocker. Like he listens to heavy metal and and all this stuff. I'm like, whoa, like where did this happen? And he's a drummer, so
Yeah.
it's sort of I'm very open, I guess, more open to what the harp can be used for than maybe I was before. Yeah.
Right. And if we can take that further, what unusual spaces and places have you seen the harp being used? Apart
So
from
there's a
on
huge,
stage, right? Yeah.
well, orchestrally, I mean, that's one. Then you've got the folk scene. Then I have people that talk about therapy harp. So there is the harp therapy course. I think there's in Queensland, they have somebody up there. In Tassie, Helen Morrison does one of the therapy courses. I met a lady at Harp Camp who plays for animals. I don't think it was RSPCA because she said there were sheep and things she would play for as well. So I think it's an organisation that takes in animals that are rescued from all walks of animal life. So I guess zoos and things like that. And she just plays to them to calm them down or just to give them some good, I guess, vibrations from the harp. So and then, I mean, overseas, I know there's Adriana does harp and tap. So there's a lot of things out there. The harp is becoming more involved with. It's not just you are an orchestral player. You can pretty much harp and yoga. I know that happens. It's very therapeutic. I mean, it's one of those instruments where anybody can touch it and it sounds okay. It's not like the violin, where at the beginning you're like, please. Or if somebody's doing a wind instrument, it's like, okay, we've got over that phase. The harp is quite
Beginner
accessible
friendly.
to it. Yeah, it's very beginner friendly, and I think it's quite positive because of that. Anybody starting, you got positive reinforcement from day one. You don't go, oh God, like when is this phase over? And it's people like it.
Yeah.
My neighbours, they'll often go, oh, it's like we're in a day spa. And I'm like, seriously? Because they're having a shower, right? And I'm practicing. It's like a day spa. I'm like, okay. So, my family aren't so keen about it. I mean, after 6 hours of it, they're like, just stop. But other people appreciate it, if you know what I mean.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good vibration.
Yeah.
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 So
Yeah.
you are involved in so many great projects. What is your future vision for making harp more accessible, having more people play, all of that great stuff?
I think after COVID hit the business hard, it hit the music world hard. And I found during that period, a lot of customers would just ring up and want to talk, especially my Victorians. So it kind of puts some perspective on, okay, what am I actually doing for the harp world? I take my skill set for granted. I really do, even though I know it's not what everybody was exposed to. I don't know any different. And as a result of that, my Tassie students really kind of reinforce the fact that you've got this skill set. And I always remember my harp teacher saying to me, make sure all your students are better than you. Make sure you give back. Get the harp world. Do something for the harp world. And I think New Zealand really highlighted the potential. So next year I've got Josh Lane coming. He's coming to Harp Island. Then he will tour Australia. And Adriano is coming to Australia and he's got New Zealand in the middle. I ideally would like to see more international artists just coming. So I'm gradually building up a network for that. And then there is a lot of local harpists that are just sitting there. that no one knows about. I mean, even just harp camp, there's some super talented harpists there, and their skill set, but people really just don't know. So I'm just, when people ask me to do things, I go, yeah. Like, so when you ask me, I'm like, yeah, why not? I feel I'm in a position that I can really push and promote people's little, and some of the things people want to do obscure, I guess, or they kind of go, oh, is this really a thing? Like, who's going to support that? And I go, well, I don't actually know all of the things that people do, but I'm happy to support it.
Yeah.
Like if, people say they're going to play for animals, I'm like, I don't know anything about that, but if you let me know you're doing something, I'll support it, come along. Or, there's people that probably just sitting in the background going, oh, I think this is a bit wacky, but oh no, so-and-so's doing it. And then I do have a lot of information that I keep on my database for all customers, which if I know somebody is into such and such, I can actually pull up their information and I can get them to hook up. So I spend a lot of time. If you ring me once, you're on my database about why you rang, what you needed. So then, if you need further information, I can actually, pass you on to the correct people, because I don't know everything. The other thing I would really like to see is a harp maker that is super young. The harp makers we currently have, they are getting on, and it's like, is there somebody out there that has carpentry skills, a musical background, that's willing to learn it? There is a huge market for local harps, even metal work. If you've got a lathe or whatever those people use to make tuning pins or whatever. Ideally, if I can source local, this is coming now from a business perspective, if I can source my hardware local, I will. Harp cover, heavy duty harp cover manufacturer, local. There's a market for that.
Yeah,
So I have my ears and eyes open. It's not just about the harp playing. It's from therapy all the way to making. I don't understand the full dynamics of making. I know little bits, only because I've been forced into learning it. But I'm open, and I often tell people, when they first ring, you don't have to buy anything from me, but if you need information, I will offer the harp library service, where you ring me up. I've sold harps over the internet, where I've known the harp and I've known the owner of the harp. So I know most harpists that, I mean, throughout the whole of Australia. So some people go, should I buy that harp? I don't know anything about it. I'm like, yep, it's a such and such. It belongs to so and so. Go for it. Just don't even hesitate. And then they get back to me and go, how did you know? And it's like, because I do. Because I know the person, I know the harp. And then others, I'm like, maybe not. Because every industry has dodgy things.
Sure.
Yeah.
I
So,
love the
yeah.
way that
So,
you can connect over such a, our country is huge, but you're connecting people, you're bringing them together. One of your visions was to create more togetherness, playing together.
I think
The
so.
social aspect is important. So, and you also just revealed to me recently that you were a nurse at one stage. So I'm
Yes.
thinking there's that
So,
nurturing aspect.
yeah, I got a real job, I always tell people. So I was a registered nurse at 19, and I got a real job because I thought that's what you're supposed to do. All my family went medical, except my younger sister. She was a lawyer. So it was in the family to I guess, do that as well. So I was a nurse for about 10 years. And then when my son was born, I kind of stepped away from it, and I didn't actually plan my music career. It just happened. So people always say, "What did you do? How did you get into it?" And it just kind of happened. So I just went with it. And actually, now if I had to get back into nursing, I'd have to get re-registered. I let my license lapse, so that's almost 20 years ago. But I really don't regret being a nurse. It's really shaped the way I view the world and how I play, I think, too. There's some perspective. I often would go to like orchestra rehearsal after I've done a shift at Royal Adelaide, and I'd be like, seriously, guys, you care about a fortissimo? Somebody died today. Like, what? So then I'd kind of go like, how does that work? Like what's important? What isn't important? Who says it's important?
Yeah,
Um, um,
definitely. Yeah.
is one's not right or wrong. It's just it is what it is. But there was kind of like this dichotomy of, yeah.
So if we were to wrap up the conversation, I would love to ask you one more question, and that
Yeah.
is advice for someone who's just had that seed planted, who goes, "Oh yeah, I really want to play the harp." What happens from there?
You're never too old to start is probably my first thing. 79 was my oldest, and from lever harp to pedal harp. I will then get a bit of information about why they want to play the harp, what brought them to it, because some people come for different reasons. So some it's been a lifelong dream, some have come because it was recommended as a trauma therapy. So and so's friend is doing it, so they want to be part of the group. And then once I have an idea why they want to do it, then I give them the sort of the black and white facts about it's not $60 to buy one like you could for a violin, and if you change your mind, you just kind of go, whoops, $60 doesn't matter. Most people kind of faint slightly when I say, "Oh, secondhand," it's you're getting into the thousands. So I often will recommend renting. See what you think of it, because some people go, wow, I really want to play the harp, and then when they get the thing at home they go, what on earth was I thinking? Like, I don't want to play the harp. Or they get the harp and it's like, that's it. They were like, why did I wait so long? So I sort of do need to know why they are wanting to do it. And then there's often they're adults, so they have that, oh my god, I'm too old, my husband doesn't support me, or my wife doesn't support me, my family don't, why are you spending all this kind of money? And for me, because I've had it from the age of 8, I just take it for granted. I just go, you know what, I've always had a harp. And I tell people it's like buying a car. You never go into most people just buy a car because they have to. And I often will, cross-reference that. And I think learning the harp, there's a lot more than just learning the harp. If you're older, there's the whole brain wiring, learning a new skill. There's social, and then there's sort of personal like self-esteem, confidence, playing in public, doing things that you might not have otherwise done. The Tassie crowd, I mean, it's opened a whole wealth and world of things that they probably wouldn't have. They've travelled to France, they've played there, they have international tutors coming down there. Some of these people, if you'd told them, maybe 10, 15 years ago, this is where you will be, your life will be, you'll have this exposure, they would have gone, oh, like whatever, through the harp, the harp, there's a lot more to the harp, I think, than what people realise. It doesn't matter who you speak to, it has some level of, people are affected by it, regardless of whether they know anything about it. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. It's been so great talking to you. Is there anything else you'd like to add to our conversation?
No, but I am happy that you asked me. And being the first, I kind of feel that's special. I'm glad you took on this project. And I'm really looking forward to see who else you have on, your podcast and where it goes. Yeah.
Me too.
And if you need any support in finding people to talk to, you know where I am. You know how to contact me. No, but I think it's an amazing thing that you've started.
I
So,
hope it spreads and
oh no,
love of the
100%.
harp.
Yeah,
That's what I'm hoping.
yeah,
So, my
yeah.
sincere thank you for sharing all your insights with us today. And perhaps we can have another conversation in the future to reflect on some of those wonderful projects that are underway at the moment.
Yes. Thank you, and thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to The Gift of Harp. Check back next time to delight in revealing another charming harp player changing the world in new and exciting ways.